Good morning. Ni hao. So, welcome to the United Nations side event hosted by Aham Education, the Suchi Foundation, and the Southeast Climate and Energy Network, and all of our other local and national partners. We welcome you, and we thank you for taking the time out this morning to join us. My name is Nellie Bisram. I'm the Executive Director and the founder of Aham Education. I'm also NGO representative to the United Nations. This is our first side event. I was trained by Steve Chu, who you'll meet in a moment, and I thought, 9 months into playing this role, I thought that a side event was a multi-day event because the last event I attended was at Suchi. And so when we planned this multi-day event, I didn't realize that a side event is just one panel. So we're starting off as overachievers, so to speak. So I'm really excited, and I think we have an amazing agenda over the next couple of days. So we're going to start off our session today with an opening practice, which really kind of, and you'll have a chance to experience this over the next couple of days. We're really about embodying the work and experiencing it before we talk about it. So to help us do that, one of our panelists, Dr. Carol Penn, who is a double board certified in family medicine and obesity medicine, and is the founder of Penn Global Visions and Penn Global Medical Group, a 2-time best-selling author, international speaker on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she is also a beloved member in our community in South Florida because she is one of the mind-body medicine facilitators that help to train many in our community. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Penn.
Good morning, everyone. So we are going to have a beautiful practice with our breath. I invite everyone to engage in this in the spirit of a little experimentation. So are we ready? All right, so I ask you now just to take a moment to become aware of your body, uncross your legs or your ankles, and allow your feet to settle on the floor. If it helps to close your eyes, you can go ahead and gently close your eyes. Or if you'd like to hold them open softly, just no hard, fixed stares, maybe even slightly looking downward so the eyelids feel soft. The muscles around the eyes begin to relax. And your next breath, I'm going to ask you to take a nice deep cleansing breath in through your nose and open the lips slightly, letting that breath out. Beautiful. And allow the body to let go and settle back into your chair just a little bit more, inviting the face muscles to relax, the neck to relax, the shoulders, the upper back, the lower back, your thighs, your knees, your lower legs, right down through the feet. Beautiful. And now, your next breath, breathing in, and let that breath out through the nose. So in and out through the nose. And ask yourself, how does that breath feel to me right now in this moment? And just notice, not changing anything, just noticing. Inviting the body to release a little bit more with each breath. Next breath, breathe in through the nose, and now let this breath out through the mouth. And the next few breaths, just take in through the nose and out through the mouth, and just notice. Which breath feels better to me right now in this moment? In through the nose and out through the nose, or in through the nose and out through the mouth? And then stay with whichever breath brings you a sense of spaciousness, freedom, flow, movement, water. For we are 60, 70, 80% water at any given time, depending upon our age, depending upon muscle tissue, depending upon adipose or fat tissue, depending upon our skeletal tissue and the densities in our body. But we are water, we are flow, 70 to 100 trillion cells inside our body. And just like the incoming and the outcoming of the tides, we are at once water, breath, water, breath, water, breath. And as we begin to deepen this relaxation, we come into deeper connection with ourselves, with each other, and with this moment as we open ourselves to the possibility of greater understanding, of evolution of ourselves, evolution of our planet. And the possibilities that come with our deep connection to life as breath, as water, as movement, as life itself. Let's take one more deep cleansing breath together, and if you'd like, even let it out with a sigh. Beautiful. Before we open our eyes, if you need to, wiggle your fingers and toes, just stretching, letting out a little bit more tension from the body, letting that feeling of spaciousness and movement, breath, life, and water bubble up to our lips, letting a smile come to our lips. And as we open our eyes, taking in the moment, maybe looking to the left and to the right, seeing who is gathered in this community with us this morning. And so it is, and we begin. Thanks, Dr. Penn.
Thanks so much, Dr. Penn, for the lovely opening mindfulness practice with us. I'm so grateful that you are all joining us here in person and also online as we launch our first of 2 days of our UN Water Conference's side events focused on water for healing, justice, and action, building blocks of a new resiliency program. I hope that through this morning mindfulness practice, you've already begun to find more centeredness within yourself as we begin this exciting conversation. And we know happening inside the UN, there's been a lot of talk. And one of the beauties of side events is we get to elevate beyond just conversation and really build community dialogue and show the realities of what is lived on the ground. And so before we kick off a really exciting panel discussion, I'm delighted to introduce Cathleen Dean, who is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker on water justice, who is here with us today to share with us her film, Wade in the Water, Drowning in Racism. So I'll pass over to Cathleen to give us some opening remarks before we watch the film together.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So just to tell you a little bit about the film, it is about Florida. And when most people think of Florida, they think of beaches and sun and sand. And there's also a history of protest and resistance and segregation and discrimination in Florida. And this story, Wade in the Water, Drowning in Racism, tells us about that. It was something that was uncovered to me through a search for my personal fitness journey, which led me to diversity in aquatics, which led me to the people that you are going to meet in this film, and to this story. And in this changing climate, it's so important for us to know our history and to keep it alive and to learn from it. So I hope you enjoy the film. Thank you very much.
As time went on and water became coveted more and more by whites, they wanted to keep black and brown people away because black and brown people were seen as inferior. So during segregation and colonization, they had to be relegated to somewhere else that was dangerous, or they had nowhere to go.
White communities, like here in Fort Lauderdale, built a pool for African Americans to use. And there were vibrant swim teams and swim programs around these pools in Black America.
As I battled the ocean for my soul, I could have sworn I heard my grandmother telling me to wade. Wade. Wade in the water.
Thank you, Kathleen, for the beautiful film and for bringing it into this space for us to really bear witness to the history of the challenges that we've faced here in the Americas, and to help us also contextualize what we're about to dive into in this conversation, which is really how we achieve water justice. How can we go about decolonizing and restoring our intergenerational relationships to water for access, safety, and post-traumatic healing? I'm really excited to now invite our panel and our moderator to join us for this session and begin to have this conversation as we begin our first session. So I'll now pass the space over to Dr. Miriam Lynch to invite our panel up and introduce them as well. Over to you.
Thank you. First off, thank you so much for having us and having this discussion here today. I'd like to invite our panel to come on up here. You've met Dr. Carol Penn, who is a physician and part of the mind-body medicine. She's a facilitator. Also, Cathleen Dean, who you just saw her wonderful film up here, Emmy award-winning film. And then I also would like to invite Mr. Thaddeus Gamery. And just to give you a little bit more on Thaddeus and who you saw in the film, is a great historian in this piece, but he's also a faculty and a special law enforcement advisor to the Center of Mind-Body Medicine. He's a former police officer, that was from here in New York, and he has been a part of the founding of Mind-Body Aquatics and Blue Mindfulness Training, which we'll talk about more today. And then, lastly, I'd like to invite Dr. Sean Anderson. He is an assistant professor at Norfolk State University. He's also the founder of Diversity in Aquatics, which I am the executive director right now, and have the privilege of serving in this role. But he's also the founder of International Water Safety Day and is a part of the National Water Safety Action Plan. Okay. So welcome our panelists. I just want to start with a little bit of acknowledgement of the land that we're standing on. As Thaddeus talked about in the beginning of the film, that this land is not ours. There are, for us in Manhattan, this is the traditional land of the Munsee Lenape people. And I just want to acknowledge the past and present and honor the land itself here that we're standing on. Because they are the ones who have they've formed this land of where we are in Manhattan. And just to give you a perspective of how large the tribe is, it goes from all the way to the Delaware River, all the way up here to Manhattan. And so I just wanted to take a moment and reflect on that before we begin. Okay. And thank you. Let's start off with digesting. That was a lot of information that was shared through the film, beautifully done, tangibly done. We've talked about the history and its impact, but I'd like to go forward, and I'm going to put this question first for Dr. Sean Anderson, in talking about that impact that we saw about the land being taken and then the purposeful separation through policies and practices, and how it's led to where we are today. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I did bring a slide here with me, if that could come up. I think the film is so very important in that it demonstrates the history and gives some context to the drowning disparity that exists in the United States today. So African Americans in the United States are 4 to 5 times more likely to drown. And I think the historic context is part of how it came to that point, if you will. So we have what we call the African American drowning disparity cycle. So that history and those historic barriers led to a lack of aquatic tradition in many African American communities. And that lack of lack of tradition in aquatic culture in many communities for many African Americans in the United States led to less connection with the water, as Thaddeus mentioned in the film. And that lack of connection is a lack of aquatic skills. Unfortunately, those lack of aquatic skills eliminated a lot of our role models in that aquatic space. So we have less lifeguards, less coaches, less aquatic directors. Unfortunately, one of the measures of whether a group of people could swim is whether or not they performed at the very highest level in the Olympics, and we have less Olympians. But we're changing that. It's growing. We happen to have a 2-time Black woman Olympian in the audience today at Sanford, Jamaica, Janelle Atkinson. So I'd like to recognize her. So we're growing and we're coming back with that connection to the water, and many of you that are here today I know are connected with it as well. But many of those lack of role models grew a lot of myths of why we're not there, and instead of the history that's pointed out in the film, things such as bone density or Achilles or your nostrils, or all these myths of why we can't swim, we can't float, we lack buoyancy, kind of filled that void, if you will, skipping all the history that you just saw. And with that, we have some social norms. You know, if the only place you can swim is the worst beach that has terrible currents, as a parent, your resolve is probably don't swim. That's a good water safety tip if the only place that you can swim is treacherous. So you go a couple of generations and now maybe you are allowed to swim there, but if that has been carried down, then that may still be your resolve. So we're breaking that as well with awareness, and awareness of water safety and awareness of the drowning statistics and the love for the water and all the awesome stuff that comes with it. With those myths and social norms, again, it leads to the present day where we are right now. It kind of repeats that cycle unless we break it through events like this, through films like this, through activism like this. So that's, I think, kind of where we are now. And you know, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think through organizations like Diversity in Aquatics and efforts with those, a lot of those that are here in the audience, we're making progress.
Thank you for that, Dr. Anderson. Absolutely. We talk about, and just to connect it even more, is that when we create the environments and then create those access points, then we can start going to the next steps into water safety and then creating the next Olympians that are out there. But let's talk about, as we talked through that with the historical factors, we want to address intergenerational trauma in this space. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Penn to talk about that impact that it's made, that it was alluded through the film of the history, but how does that affect us through our generations?
All right, thank you very much. So we do see the science of epigenetics, intergenerational trauma, affecting all areas of our life. So if we could bring up the slide so people can observe that. And so it's actually a few slides in. I will keep talking while the slide is coming up, where literally our thoughts, our ideas, our fears become embodied. They become a part of our nervous system. They become a part of our ability to relax or not relax. Our fears and our tensions are passed down from generation to generation and literally become a part of our central nervous system, if you will. And so we were having an experience in the beginning where we had the practice of mindfulness with the breath. How many of you noticed a change? How many people felt more relaxed after we did that? Yeah, so what happened? There was a physiological response that happened, and part of that, when we inhale, when we breathe in, that's our central nervous system is literally putting our foot on our gas pedal. That's our sympathetic tone. That's our get up and go. That's our wake up. But it can also be when it is always on the gas pedal, leading to that fight or flight response where we tense up, where we get, cold hands and feet. The body gets into a defensive state. Now when we exhale, that's our parasympathetic state, leading us to relax or let go, and this maintains equilibrium. However, when that's in overdrive, that goes the freeze response or a collapse or a stuck. So next slide. And these things are literally passed down generation to generation. So if you look up here, we have our fight and our flight, we have our freeze and our fawn, and you might recognize yourself in this, and this is not separate from the water because so many of us, particularly from marginalized community, bring fear-based stories with us to the water, and it keeps us from swimming. So the sympathetic, and we have irritability, anger, aggression, and moving toward. You might notice that people are really cranky after the pandemic, so we get a lot of that. You see anxiety and fear, panic, avoiding, chronic worry, perfectionism, and so again, this is not separate from what we've just experienced globally. And then the trauma responses of stuck, collapse, immobilization, spacing out, dissociation, depression, and shame, along with also people pleasing, avoiding conflict, needing to prioritize others' needs over our own. Next slide. So you might have said, well, I'm in all four of those. And many of us are. So this is the important slide that gets to that intergenerational trauma. So many of you might have heard of the adverse childhood events or the ACE study, and that's part of it, where you have adverse childhood experiences as a young child, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, a parent that is ill, a parent that has been put into the prison system. Any of these things can trigger this, and this leads to early death. This leads to chronic disease. This leads to adoption of health risk behaviors. So again, alcoholism, substance use disorder, that seems to get passed down from generation to generation. Now you add in being from a marginalized community, being from a community where the social determinants of health and access to health care has been denied to you. So that's another label to these adverse childhood events, and we build. And this is how it gets passed down through our nervous system, through our biology, the epigenetics, generation to generation to generation. And this is what we have seen in our whole relationship to water, that being that denied access has had these neurological, biological, physical, as well as spiritual and emotional impact.
No, thank you, Dr. Penn, for that. I want to just tie in what both you and Dr. Anderson talked about and where it leads us into even more so with the disparities of today. In a lot of times in aquatics, in our realm, so I am an aquatic professional, that's what my land of study is, as well as Dr. Anderson in this space. We start in our world with the disparities. We say the 5 times more likely, 10 times more likely, but understanding the impacts through the intergenerational and the historical factors is what needs to lead that conversation. And that's what the film does so beautifully, is that it puts a tangible into where we are today, and the ripple effect of what each of these different items have led us into where we are in the access of water first, and those who are participating in this space. I'm going to take it over to Thaddeus now, and have Thaddeus talk about the work with Blue Mindfulness, and the work that's being done today in this realm to address the historical factors as well as the intergenerational trauma in aquatics to making communities feel safer around the water.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch, and good morning. So the Blue Mindfulness is bringing your breath and your presence to the moment in relationship to water. So whether you're in water, on water, or near water, you can have a healing and relaxing relationship that water brings. Many people, by just taking a shower, can experience that. And it is a true physiological and biological response that the body has to water. We're 60 to 70% water. Our brains are 70 to 80% water. All people need water and air on a daily basis. And the other thing is movement. Water, air, movement. So to have a relationship with water where you can move, and you can also counter the effects of gravity. So it actually enhances healing. In water, your blood pressure drops. Your blood volume goes up. Your oxygen intake goes up. The stress on your joints and the lubrication of your joints, because the gravity is reduced only 10% to 10%, and the joints actually can have more space. Blood, oxygen starts to flow. Enhances healing of injury. If you go a little deeper in water, then you have what's called the mammalian effect, where you actually, the body starts to change. So we were designed to be underwater, by the way, like the dolphins and the manatees that are mammals. We're actually designed to go underwater. So free diving was a universal activity. So when my personal journey took me through water for my own healing, I decided, after meeting these amazing folks in Diversity and Aquatics some 11 years ago in Florida, that I wanted to pursue this specialty, this special category, and actually for adults first. Because a fearful adult, like we heard from Dr. Penn, and the generational trauma can be passed down. Even though the child didn't experience the fear of the water, and I've witnessed it and I've seen it working with children, that they're afraid as if it happened to them. But it didn't. Worked with a 75-year-old grandmother, had never had a water incident, froze on me in a lesson in the pool, and said what happened to her is the fear of her mother's story of her brother, who she never met, who died before in drowning, died before. So when we started to add the breath and some mindfulness practices on the pool deck, before getting in the water, more and more adults said, hey, I'm afraid. I would like to do that. I would like to have an experience where I, at 50, 60, 70 years old, could float on my back in the water and look at the sun in Florida for the first time in their lives. Because they trusted each other, and with the breathing, you can create a community connection where you, not only are you more relaxed about yourself, you're more connected to the other people. And you feel safe. So we were practicing in Diversity and Aquatics, the mindfulness practices, we started to bring it to the beach. And that's where we connected with AHAM education. And that's where we started to grow our weekly beach meditation practice for self-care. And it was started during the pandemic. For self-care, for self and community, a community-wide approach.
No, and thank you about that, Thaddeus. And that's what we've been able to go to is approaching it through a community level. I want to go and talk about now is that a community approach? What are some of the different practices that we have seen or that we've experienced beyond, I love the beach cleanup and bringing the two organizations together. And I thank AHAM Education, one, for this opportunity here, but seeing that connection between clean water and water safety and building community, the trifecta of all, because we all are related through the water, right? We are water, as you said in the beginning. But let's talk about some other things to give our audience examples. And I'm gonna start with you first, Kathleen, because you've done the film and you've traveled and you've seen and you've heard from audiences. What are some things and approaches that you've seen in this space?
So we've been using the film, as you mentioned, for community outreach and engagement to help to reduce the number of the drowning rate in the African American community, which, as Dr. Anderson said, is 4 to 5 times that of Caucasian children. And also to dispel the myths and the stereotypes that Black people don't swim, because we do, and very well, some of us win medals. And to also encourage more people to start a relationship with the water, and to, if they're an adult, to connect with our community, to get adult learn to swim lessons, which Thaddeus offers through our chapter of diversity and aquatics in South Florida. So as I've gone around and shared this film across the country, I've encountered people who have trauma stories, who were thrown into the water and developed a fear of the water. I've discovered people in my own circle who had near drowning experiences and were traumatized by those experiences, who now work with Thaddeus and have learned to overcome that trauma. I've met people who have cried after watching the film, because they come from an island where that water culture was still very much alive, and then having relocated here, they're experiencing, I guess, the secondary trauma of the separation that we've been, forced to have with the water. So it's been a really eye-opening experience. So many people are not aware of the history that, we were actually denied access to the water. You couldn't access the water unless you had a pass. So, as I travel around and share this story, and storytelling is so important in everything that we do, it's, I hope, helping to change the culture and encourage more people to start that relationship with the water.
Beautifully said. We're going to watch a quick film, a newsreel that talks more and kind of shows you about some of the actions happening between our partnership.
We come to the beach every Sunday for a community of practice on the Vondi Mizell Eula Johnson State Park. This is the first historic Black beach that was named after an African American, and so we come here intentionally to restore connection to water and nature. And our partners are AHAM Education, my organization, the Southeast Climate and Energy Network, Diversity in Aquatics, the SWIMS Foundation, which is sponsored by the Children's Services Council of Broward, students and teachers of the Broward County Public School System. Often we think of self-care as something personal, as something, we come here, we experience the beach, we feel good, we go home, we deal with, it helps us to deal with stress and deal with life. The most radical act of self-care is when we give service to others and we understand that the planet is an extension of our own bodies. So taking care of the planet is not just another important issue.
So today we're here, we're cleaning up, we're practicing mindfulness, we're cleaning up the beach, but we're doing it as a mindfulness practice. And we really look forward to growing this in our community in the years to come.
Beautifully shown of the two being combined here between clean water, mindfulness, and water safety. I think combining all three, it's not separate as we talked about before. They're all pieces combined as an eco cycle to helping one another. And that was evidenced there and led by Thaddeus and Nellie to combine those efforts has been amazing. So let's talk about what can we do? What are the action steps that we can take home with us today as we finish out our panel discussion? What are we encouraging others who are part of the clean water and who are part of water safety to do together in this space? And I'm going to start with our panel with Dr. Carol Penn, and then we'll go down the line for each of our panelists to give some statements, some quick statements.
Thank you. Certainly one place to begin is definitely begin with the mindfulness practices, begin with the breath, begin to become aware first in the self. First, what is happening in here? So I do encourage people to cultivate a practice with the breath, a practice with mindfulness, a practice with meditation, and take that everywhere you go. I think we modeled it here beautifully with the land acknowledgement, the opening practice, because this is in fact not separate, not an add-on, so that in your work and in your walk in the world, it becomes the difference between being and doing. We don't need another thing to do. Most of us really don't need that. However, if we are allowed to fall into the space of the breath where it becomes something you are, a part of your I am, it walks in the room in front of you, and it makes this work of being an activist as available to you as your next breath.
I think that in the newscast there, that Nellie hit it right on the head, where taking care of the planet is taking care of yourself. And, through Diversity in Aquatics, International Water Safety Foundation, we've done this in multiple communities throughout the world. So we've done it in Mexico, Jamaica, Bahamas, the Maldives, Philippines. And the interesting part about a lot of those places, we taught swim lessons in the ocean. And combined with that was cleaning up the beach. If it's dirty enough, you have to clean it up before you can even go in, all right? But you get in, you get connected to the water, and then you're like, well, you're not going to be able to keep swimming here if we pollute this water, which opens up the conversation. You're enjoying it, you're there, you want to keep on enjoying it, to take care of it, which brings you to the conversation that's a little not as clear to see. Where you can start to have that conversation. And by the way, XYZ company is down the street and may be affecting your water that you're drinking as well. So you won't be able to get in it, and you're going to have less drinking water. So I think that's how this ties right into the UN Water Summit, where it's all one, and you're getting 2 for 1, right? You're getting safer in and around the water, but it's opening up just, you can touch that, you could pick up that trash. Right, and I think so often in the drinking and sanitation, it's hard for a lot of people because you maybe can't really see it, or it's maybe 10, 15 years down the road that is where it's going to affect you, and you're getting right there in the now, and a lot of people can make that connection. So I think opening that door is kind of what we're about, and hopefully we can continue doing that.
Being in relationship with water starts with all of us. So if you had a relationship with water, come on back. If you don't have a relationship with water, start to create one, and we're here to help you. The relationship with water can start in your bathtub, in your shower, in a jacuzzi, walking along water, and learning about water. The awareness of what water is and how it affected the body for indigenous people was clear. They understood how to float, how to breathe, how to hold the breath, where to go, where not to go. Accidents do happen. But generally speaking, they understood the tides, weather patterns that would affect the water, when to be, where to go, where not to go, when to go. Even as a scuba diver, we can't go out sometimes. It's too cloudy because the water's moving too fast, or we like to go into the current and let it take us as a scuba diver, and we're flying effortlessly. Be the change you want to see in the water. Look backwards to move forward, because there was a time where we all knew we were water, and water is our medicine, because we are water. And for children to see your example, because they were talking about youth, let them see the joy you have for water. Let them experience it. Let them see you not be afraid and get, if there is any, get through it with breath. But also tell the truth, to be safe and to be competent. So it's competency, water competency, or swim efficacy. Be the change. Start now, envision it, breathe, imagine, plan it. And we have some way for you to experience it soon, by the way.
So my advice would be for everyone to share your water story. Telling stories helps us to exchange information and to start a process of change and growth, and to preserve and capitalize on what's important. So water is so important. It connects each and every one of us. It is sustenance, it's life, it's medicine. We have to protect it. And donating to organizations like Diversity in Aquatics, who are, on that mission, and all of the other great organizations here for this conference. Let's support them, and together we can really make a difference.
Beautifully said to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause real quick. As Thaddeus says, we've known each other for quite some time. We are more like family, and we are pleasantly pleased and grateful to be a part of this family here with AHAM Education. I want to ask the audience and give the audience some opportunity to ask some questions. And so as you think about your questions, I do want to acknowledge two people in this that are also part of our family. Miss Olga Perez, who will be seeing Herb on Saturday. So welcome. And then also two-time Olympian Janelle Atkinson from Jamaica, one of the highest ranking females, black females, and the highest ranking from Caribbean country in the Olympics. So just want to acknowledge them. And when you get a chance, say hi. So we'll open up some questions. Does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Or any thoughts? Would you like to share your water story? How many of you guys swim? Okay, we're all connected through the water. We all swim, kind of. Oh. How many of you? Let's go just aside, recreation, just for recreation, or for we'll do recreation first. Most of us, just recreation. Okay. Does anybody participate in, other than just swimming, surfing? Canoes. What else? Yes. However, yeah. Canoes. Yes. Oh, okay. I was just thinking, anybody a scuba diver here? Okay, we got a scuba diver in the honors, and Thaddeus as well. But we're all these different mechanisms connect us. right? It doesn't matter how you approach water, but you're approaching it. You're creating a relationship, as Thaddeus said. And I love what he said about, even when you're in a shower, you're still connected to the water. Taking a bath, walking along the waterways, you're still connected to the water, but we all have a piece to play in making sure to protect it. So I'm going to give our closing. If there are no any questions, it's okay. I'm going to close it out with Thaddeus with some closing remarks and then a breathing exercise.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch. And if you could just imagine a time where everyone did have a relationship with water, that water was essential, it was daily, it was deep, it was rewarding, it was healing, it was connecting. So I ask you now to join me in a little active movement, mindful meditation as if we were on and in the water. And we're going to simulate the water with our breath and our hands. So you can use 2 hands. I'm going to use 1. If your palms are down on your lap, I invite you to breathe in and let it rise. And breathe out, let it fall, just like a wave. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, the water in your breath helps you rise. Breathe out, the wave passes and it falls. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. 3 more times. Breathe in. Breathe out. 2 more times. In. Out. 1 more time. And now, gently bring your attention to how you feel. And what we've learned during this pandemic when we did mindfulness practices with the Center for Mind-Body Medicine with people around the world on Zoom, that we actually could share a feeling, an experience of healing. So now I'm just going to ask you so we can connect to the audience that may be virtually and anyone else around the world that you want to include in this moment. For our audience, we're going to just touch elbows. Just touch elbows. And now imagine that this touching is multiplied and that all our people on Zoom or that are watching virtually, and now invite other people you would like to be here who are not physically here. And now close your eyes, and we're going to take 3 deep breaths. And now open your eyes and realize we just shared a healing moment as a community of water healers. Do this again when you can.